Why do your feet hurt?
My everything hurts because I just finished my 6-week boot camp that I was doing to, be nice and svelte and fit for doing musical theater or something. And then in the middle of all that, actually 3 days shy, I fell on my knee and I showed you the Technicolor Excellence that is now a major joint that I'm supposed to, lift weights and do things with. So
here's an idea. Let's just sit here for the whole episode.
And
we won't do the choreo that we had planned.
Oh, I appreciate not having to high kick.
Is that cool?
I'm sorry there won't be a kick line today. It is totally my fault. Totally my fault.
I don't know who to look at.
Actually,
you guys are everywhere.
Welcome to that actually might be why, because you want to refer to the camera more.
Yeah.
I tend to refer to what is my camera, and if I really want to be cutesy and be like...
Right. Finger guns. Go to...
Pew pew.
Yeah, go to your...
I'm dumb.
Go to your opponents. So...
oh, God. So we're in the green room
We're
today.
in the green room.
Yeah, we are. So if we look green, it's a choice.
It is a choice. I have an idea for the perfect introduction for this.
Okay, because I'm already planning on using this, but go on. You know how I am.
Yeah, I know. So here we go. We're just chit-chatting, and then flies in a picture of a nice, post-war living room with armchairs and a fire. No, not this at all. A fireplace going, and then we're going to drop in a sound cue. There it is, right there, of the roaring, of the crackle of the fireplace. Do we have it?
Monsterpiece Theater.
It's in there? Yeah.
Me, Alistair Cookie.
This is why we can't have nice things. All right. Do you hear that? A crackle in the fireplace?
Sure.
It's Sunday afternoon, preferably before the war. You put your feet up on the sofa, settle your spectacles on your nose, and open the news of the world. A cup of mahogany brown tea has put you in just the right mood. The sofa cushions are soft, the fire is well alight, the air is warm and stagnant. In these blissful circumstances, what is it you want to read about? Naturally, about a murder. That's George Orwell, Decline of the English Murder, 1946.
Ooh la la. Now I'm getting that you brought a prop. I thought you just really needed coffee.
No, I actually did need coffee. This is always my prop.
I swear.
Yeah.
This is
I didn't mean to pick it up.
This is
yes,
but you did it on cue. She's naturally staged.
Yeah. What?
I have no idea.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a theatrical flair.
I heard a rumor.
Okay, so today's topic is murder.
Most foul. Well, or slightly foul.
When you were researching this, did you feel like you had 20 episode ideas come out?
I felt like I had
this?
20 eyes watching me because I was doing it at 10:30 at night.
Oh.
There are times when you really shouldn't be investigating because I'm sensing mine's a smidge more modern than yours.
Yes,
so.
Well, that's how we roll, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sitting here going, I'm not paranoid. I locked both my doors. My cats will protect me from... Anyway, no spoilers. No spoilers.
Well, I only took ideas pre-1920, which is kind of how we roll, right?
Yeah. I definitely went for something that's super now. So, so be prepared to be scared or something.
Ooh.
Murder.
So I have been preparing this for months.
I know this is kind of the one you were really most super excited about in so many ways. Yeah,
I'm super excited about this.
Yay.
And so the difficulty here was narrowing it down to half an episode worth of stuff.
Yeah. Snappy.
Yeah. So I do not envy I'm trying to make your job as Kay does all of our post-production editing and...
It's so sweet of you to try to make it, because then I ruin it for myself.
No, oh my God. I can't, I don't even know where I would begin. So I have a lot of respect for you, and I also feel very sorry for you when it comes down to
when it comes to all the tangents.
Editing me, yeah.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Should we just jump in?
Well, first we need to do the fade into the first title card. Cheers.
We decided that we were going to do just American murder literature.
Yeah, just because there's so many options. It was like, we have to narrow it down somehow.
I have a confession.
Did you lie?
Chapter 1 does take place in England.
That's okay.
But it has to.
A lot of things start in England.
Especially for us Americans.
Correct! I was like, do I make this tie back to everything?
I know.
I also have to have my usual trope, Thomas Jefferson. Go on. Every episode.
I know. Shout out.
Done.
All right. So we cannot talk about true crime literature or murder detective literature without talking about Thomas de Quincey. Born in 1785. He is an English essayist. He's best known for Confessions of an English Opium-Eater.
There's the title.
Yeah, which is an essay, but that's actually a whole episode in itself. That one essay, that inaugurated the whole tradition of addiction literature.
Okay.
In the West, and
Aldi weeds. No.
Well, and in his case, opium, among other vices, is what he's writing about. Yes, but you're right.
Sorry.
I mean, yes, tangents galore. So in 1821, he's in London. He's working, just doing German translations He's doing translations of German authors. Okay. And he is persuaded to write an account of his experience with his opium addiction. And it first appears in the London Magazine. Now, there are a couple of themes that I'm going to pull out through my discussion today. And one of them is this idea of the role of the magazine and who that audience was, and how crime literature is really geared toward that kind of medium and successful in that kind of medium. Yeah, I like the little glimmer that you have.
The look in my eyes. This always seems to happen with us. I'm like, okay, This is going to tie well. Yeah.
How bizarre is that?
Bizarre, but
I love
it.
Surprise I love it because we're both strange dears.
Yeah. That's why.
Yeah.
Find your peeps.
So, Confessions of an English Opium-Eater is published in 1822. It was really there was no systematic study of narcotics or drug use before this essay came out. So his essay itself got a presumed status of like the authority on opium addiction.
When you're first.
For many years, it's dominating both the scientific and the public view. Although in 1822, De Quincey did add an appendix that goes through the withdrawal process, and he had to insert significant material on the medicinal aspects of opium in his 1856 edition. So this was extremely influential on all classes, and this was not just the literati who's getting into this essay. This is the scientific community and the public at large. Mm-hmm. Berlioz based his Symphonie Fantastique on Confessions, drawing on the theme of the internal struggle with oneself. Is a huge piece of work, important piece of work. There's a play called The Opium-Eater by Andrew Dallmeyer. In 1962, Vincent Price stars in the full-length feature film Confessions of an Opium-Eater.
Vincent twice. Sorry, continue.
What's that?
It's a thing Packy always says. My husband's a nerd. Vincent Price and the reverb. Yeah, anyway, the repeat.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I did not know that about Vincent Price, but I mean, oh my God, he's so like prolific. What didn't?
And he's so synonymous with the genre.
That's right. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to tease out is there does seem to be a little the lay person's, the average middle class person's obsession with crime, drugs, murder. It's always been there from the very beginning. So we think of Thomas de Quincey as like the big granddaddy of crime lit. Mm-hmm. And for a reason. And we got to kind of look at him as a package before we look at who he influenced.
Right, exactly.
Yeah?
Here we go again.
So the year after he writes Confessions of an English Opium-Eater, he writes On Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth. It's an essay in Shakespearean criticism, and it's first published in October, the year after Opium-Eater. And it's published in the London Magazine, again. Literary critics call this Thomas de Quincey's most important work, its finest piece, one of the most penetrating critical footnotes in our literature. The essay concerns Act 2, Scene 3 in The Tragedy of Macbeth, in which the murder of King Duncan by Macbeth and Lady Macbeth is succeeded by Macduff and Lennox knocking at the gate of the castle. The knocking ends Act 2, Scene 2, and opens the Porter scene, Act 2, Scene 3. De Quincey wrote that for him, the knocking always had a pronounced effect. This is De Quincey speaking. It reflected back upon the murderer a particular awfulness and a depth of solemnity. And De Quincey couldn't account rationally for his response. According to the then accepted canons of literary criticism, he proceeds into this psychological breakdown of what that knocking does for an audience. This is the first time they're applying psychology to Shakespeare. And
tangent, but it's totally,
yeah.
I mean, there's always, to me, the best stuff that has ever, the stuff that sits in your brain, it's not what you're seeing.
Yeah.
It's what you hear.
Yeah.
Because your imagination takes that so much further than just showing the audience.
Yeah.
Like, that has always been my favorite. Like, I work haunted houses all the time.
Yeah.
I always emphasize so much, not just the jump out scare.
Yes.
They hear sounds coming from different places. My most successful haunted house I ever worked, we had speakers set directionally throughout the house so they would hear things. But I thought that was over there now. No, totally. The knocking,
yeah.
Oh my God, it does things. God, how this is going to tie into what?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
So a couple years later, a few years later, De Quincey, he's still writing for magazines. Cool. This is his thing. Mm-hmm. He's writing essays for magazines. He writes on murder considered as one of the fine arts. And he actually does a throwback to On Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth in it. It's anyway, on Murder Considered as One of the Fine Arts, it's first published in 1827 in Blackwood's magazine. It is a fictional satire. Its address is made to a gentleman's club concerning the aesthetic appreciation of murder. So this is straight up satire that he writes it in. And it's centering on this notorious crime that had just been committed in London's East End. These are called the Ratcliffe Highway murders, right? John Williams, it's 1811. He brutally kills 7 people. And De Quincey's response to Williams' attacks turns morality on its head, and it celebrates and coolly dissects the art of murder and its perfections. It's enthusiastically received when he writes it, and it leads to numerous sequels, including the very creatively titled A Second Paper on Murder Considered as One of the Fine Arts in 1839, and a postscript in 1854. Had obviously very strong influences on literary representations of crime, and this paper is lauded by G.K. Chesterton, Wyndham Lewis, George Orwell. Very important piece of writing to this new genre. It was all of a sudden, you know how when we listen to a podcast or see a movie and you're like, I think that too. I'm interested too.
And it makes you feel, my people.
Yeah.
I love how you said that a few episodes ago.
Yeah, my people, my tribe. This is my. In this era, before the satire came out, we've spoken about the murder in the Red Barn, right?
Yeah.
Of Mariah in the barn. There were so many souvenirs and so much paparazzi and pop culture, and people were keeping on their mantelpiece like copies of the bust of the murderer. It was a big thing. So what De Quincey does is he just capitalizes on that. He makes a satire of it and says, okay, we're going to be obsessed with murder. Let's talk about exactly how we're attracted to it. Yeah. So he refers to the Macbeth murders in this piece. And in general, we can tell from when we look at all of Thomas de Quincey's writings, he has an encyclopedic knowledge of contemporary crime. He knows what's happening. He's kind of a murderino. He's in his contribution to literature of crime, violence, decadence also, and also detection. Edgar Allan Poe, born in 1809. He is an American. Now, yes, when we think of Edgar Allan Poe, we think of Gothic, right? Sure. We think of the death of young girls. We think of death. And yes, murder. Here's some things that he had in common with Thomas de Quincey. Yes, they're both addicts. They are literary critics as a day job. Right? And they're writing for newspapers and magazines.
It's where the gigs were. Yeah.
Yeah. So Poe is important to us, yes, in American literature, but specifically when we're looking at detective novels and detective literature. So he creates a character, the Chevalier C. Auguste Dupin. He's a fictional character who begins what we know of today as the detective novel. He makes his first appearance in Poe's The Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is 1841, and it's widely considered the first detective fiction story. He reappears in The Mystery of Marie Roget in 1842 and The Purloined Letter in 1844. Dupin is not a professional detective. Oh no. And his motivations for solving the crimes are different in each of the books. So he starts off as kind of like he has this interest in the crime, and he's got to, for his own intellectual satisfaction, find out the murder, and he actually refuses the reward. By the third one, he's actually, it is noble. By the third one, he gets a payout. Yeah.
By the third one, he's like, I got bills though. So.
But what's important here is that Dupin is combining his intellect with imagination, even putting himself inside the mind of the criminal. His talents are strong enough that he appears to be able to read the mind of even his companion, who is the unnamed narrator of all three stories. Sounding familiar? Beginning to sound familiar? You're seeing it, right?
These are setting up the rules that everybody's going to
That's right.
follow lockstep with.
That's right.
Things that work so well.
Poe created the Dupin character before even the word detective was a word. Okay, so here's some things that are going to maybe sound familiar. These are kind of the beginning of the rules that we like to follow. Okay. Dupin is from what was once a wealthy family, but by a variety of untoward circumstances, has been reduced to more humble circumstances and contents himself only with the basic necessities of life. He now lives in Paris with his very close friend, the anonymous narrator of the stories. The two meet by accident while they're both searching for the same rare and very remarkable volume in an obscure library. They promptly move to an old manor located in Faubourg Saint-Germain. And for hobbies, Dupin is fond of enigmas, conundrums, and hieroglyphics. Ooh. Dupin shares some features with the later gentleman detective, a character type that becomes common in the golden age of detective fiction. Mm-hmm. And he's acquainted with the police prefect G, who appears in all three stories seeking his counsel.
All of these guys need that guy who's rooted in the establishment to
That's it.
Work off of. Yeah.
And then we have the sidekick.
Of course.
Yep.
You need
the two buddies.
Yeah.
Yep. So, literary significance of this. Dupin is widely acknowledged as the first detective in fiction, and he's the prototype, as we discussed, for Sherlock Holmes, Hercule
Poirot.
By Agatha Christie.
I see you're French and I raise you, ma'am.
Yes.
There's another running thing. It doesn't seem to be able to pronounce French.
Arthur Conan Doyle once wrote, each of Poe's detective stories is a route from which a whole literature has developed. Where was the detective story until Poe breathed life into it? Wow, the man himself.
Yeah.
Right? Dupin also initiates a storytelling device where the detective announces his solution and then explains the reasoning behind it. And
You're probably wondering why I've called you all here tonight.
That's right. He did it.
Mr. Body has been found in the library with a knife sticking out of his back.
Yeah. Like Sherlock Holmes, Dupin uses considerable deductive process and observation to solve crimes. And Poe also portrays the police in an unsympathetic manner as a sort of foil to detective.
Tell me you know the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock.
Yes, very well. I know, and I wanted to reference it a little bit, but I want to stay in my own lane, which is
No, it's okay. I'm just wanting you to get through your notes because the thing about the Sherlock adaptation, besides how slow it came out, because I realized suddenly when you've got Martin Freeman and you've got Benedict Cumberbatch, this thing's going to have to come out when their schedules will allow.
Yeah.
But particularly that first season is so smart.
Yeah.
And something we talked about a few episodes back about kind of your running length of something. Those episodes are super long, but no one cares because it's that compelling. It's like if you got something that good and it's set in a now, in a very believable kind of... this was also before Benedict Cumberbatch kind of started getting known for that sort of eccentric genius kind of thing. When it was fresh, when it was... And you're seeing his thoughts in front of him.
Yes, right, and the text messages.
So much... We're talking about... And you're referring to using the medium of the time. I'm reading it and I'm feeling
blogs
and now you've got people going texting this and seeing things in his mind and doing these equations you can see and then literally pushing them aside. It's just so smart on so many levels that you can't not bring that into this conversation because it's, I think sadly, even though we're talking about how relevant these books are and how people were really into them, how you feel like murder is always going to be kind of evergreen as far as something that people will want to read. Something like a Sherlock Holmes tends to start to pick up that, it's the dusty thing on the shelf and the guy with the pipe and his little eccentric doctor friend, all the things, and you're like, oh God, it's so dusty and on the shelf. But when you take that thing and go, no, the core of this and the themes in this are exactly now. And a lot of this method is very much the kind of thing that still is applied today.
That ties in perfectly because it's important to know that Poe here is establishing a genre that's going on today. Right? And he's establishing, we talked about the tropes, but he's also establishing three types of fiction that are modeled. There is the physical type of detection, like in the Murders in the Rue Morgue. There is the mental investigation, like the Mystery of Marie Roget, where it plays with your mind a little bit because it is a real life thing. And then a balanced version of both, like in the Purloined Letter. So obviously Poe, major American writer. The Mystery Writers of America have named their awards for excellence in that genre the Edgars.
The Edgar.
That's the name of the award.
Hey, when you get an award named after you, I guess you made a slight impression on history. And your medium.
Are you ready for chapter 3?
I am ready.
Okay. So what's happened, Poe has now established this genre, and we have a lot of other American writers who are now taking on true crime and detective novels. I thought it would be fun to just focus in on some ladies.
Hey, ladies.
Hey, ladies. So we're getting closer to the 20th century now. Really important author, who happens to be a woman, is Anna Katharine Green, born in Brooklyn in 1846. She's one of the first writers of detective fiction in America, period. Okay? And she distinguished herself by writing well-plotted, legally accurate stories. Okay? And she's been called, if we think of like Thomas de Quincey is like the big granddaddy of detective or crime fiction, and Edgar Allan Poe as Daddy. She's considered the mother of the detective novel. She has an early ambition to write romantic poetry, and she actually corresponds with Ralph Waldo Emerson about her poetry, but it's failing to get recognized and certainly not published. So she produces a novel, The Leavenworth Case, in 1878, and it is a hit of the year. She becomes a best-selling author and eventually publishes about 40 books. But she was credited as popularizing a genre a decade before Arthur Conan Doyle brought out his first Sherlock. So she's doing this still. That's right. This is still pre-Sherlock. She's also credited with shaping the detective fiction into its classic form and really fleshing out the series detective. Her main character was Detective Ebenezer Gryce. Sure. Ebenezer Grace? Grease?
Grease is the word.
Grease? Ebenezer? Of the New York...
Call him Eddie.
Yeah. Of the New York Metropolitan Police Force. But in 3 novels, he's assisted by... Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
The nosy society spinster Amelia Butterworth.
Oh.
She's the prototype for Miss Marple.
Okay.
Miss Silver. Other creations. She also invented the girl detective in the character of Violet Strange, who I think should be the mascot for our show. Violet Strange. She's the debutante with a secret life as a sleuth. Obviously, she influenced writers such as Agatha Christie and Conan Doyle, to even contemporary writers of whodunits. In addition to creating this spinster character and the young, the female sleuth, her plot devices include dead bodies in libraries, newspaper clippings as clues, the coroner's inquest, and expert witnesses. So remember we talked about her being like, she brings legal correctness, accuracy into the game. Yale Law School, in fact, once used her books to demonstrate how damaging it can be to rely on circumstantial evidence. And her book, A Leavenworth Case, A Lawyer's Story, sparked a debate in the Pennsylvania State Senate over whether the book could really have been written by a woman.
And they say the arts have no place in the modern world.
Oh, this is a funny thing.
Okay.
S.S. Van Dyne solemnly wrote an introduction to a memorial edition of The Leavenworth Case that was published in 1924. And both he and the publisher thought she was dead. So they write a whole,
Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
And she was much alive. She was only 78, and she lived another 11 years after.
All these things that were happening before we thought they were happening. She was internet dead before there was an internet.
That's right. Isn't that cute? Okay, so we have Anna Catherine Green. Then we have Mary Roberts Reinhardt, born in 1876. She was born in Allegheny City, which is now part of Pittsburgh. I did not know that. She's often called the American Agatha Christie. Ironically, her first mystery novel was published 14 years before Christie's in 1920.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah. She was left-handed.
Okay.
During a time that it was considered inappropriate,
well, no,
so she was taught.
Downright evil. Actually,
Yeah.
Let's be clear. If you were a lefty, you had that stamped out of you.
She had to learn how to write with her right hand. She attended the Pittsburgh School for Nurses and became a nurse. She actually met her husband, who was a physician there. And during the stock market crash of 1903, they lost their savings. So she had to figure out a way to make a living because she's a mother by this point.
Right.
So she needed to make a living while she stayed at home with her kids. So she's 27 years old, and she writes 45 short stories. In 1907...
Change the diaper, do a little writing with the correct hand, go fix the dinner, write more.
So, 1907, she writes a novel called The Circular Staircase, and she becomes famous overnight. It's national bestseller. It sells 1.25 million copies. And in 1907, that's amazing.
That's amazing in general.
Yeah,
but yeah, especially.
Yeah. Considering Poe's first books, they sold 50 copies. They printed 50 copies.
Yeah.
Her regular contributions to the Saturday Evening Post were immensely popular and helped the magazine mold American middle-class taste and manners. Another cool thing that has nothing to do with her work in the murder genre, but it's just interesting. She suffered from breast cancer and she had a radial mastectomy. And this is back, in the 40s. Yeah. She does an interview called I Had Cancer. in 1947, and it's published in the Ladies' Home Journal. And in it, Reinhardt encourages women to have breast examinations. This is 1947. This is way back then. It's amazing.
It's not like we weren't having breast cancer back then. We just didn't talk about it.
We didn't talk about it.
But you need to.
Yeah. So she's important in that scene, in the breast cancer awareness scene. She's one of the very first, the pioneers in making that part of the discussion. Very so cool. That's pretty cool. Super interesting. So she writes, obviously, several hundred short stories, poems, travelogues, and articles, and many of her books were adapted for plays and for movies, such as, and this is kind of important, The Bat in 1927, The Bat Whispers in 1930, Miss Pinkerton in 1932, and The Bat, a 1959 remake. In 1933, RCA Victor releases The Bat as one of the earliest talking book recordings. And she co-wrote the 1920 play The Bat, which was later adapted into the 1930 film The Bat Whispers, which influences Bob Kane in the creation of Batman's iconography.
I love it.
The Circular Staircase that she published way back in 1908 is credited with inventing the had I but known school of mystery writing. Right. In The Circular Staircase, a middle-aged spinster is persuaded by her niece and nephew to rent a country house for the summer. The gentle, peace-loving trio is plunged into a series of crimes solved with the help of the aunt. The Had I But Known mystery novel is one where the principal character, frequently the female, does things in connection with a crime that have the effect of prolonging the action of a novel. Also, the phrase, the butler did it, which has become a cliche, is from Reinhardt's novel, The Door, in which the butler actually does murder someone, although that exact phrase does not take place in the work. Tim Kelly adapted that play into a musical called The Butler Did It, Singing.
I was wondering where that kind of idea came from. That's very cool that it came from her writing. And it's also very cool that it wasn't actually said.
Yeah, it's never there.
No, it's like Beam Me Up Scotty was never said. That sort of thing.
Interesting.
It was never actually said.
Yeah, but it comes a catchphrase.
Yeah, Elementary, My Dear Watson, I don't believe is actually phrased in those, that way. Yeah. It's the way pop culture remembers things. No, that's cool.
Yeah. All right, so our last lady of Miss American Mystery writers is Carolyn Wells, who's born in 1862. She's born in Rahway, New Jersey.
Hey, bring it on home.
Fun fact, she's married to Houghton Houghton, the heir of the Houghton Mifflin publishing empire. Oh. Yeah. So, okay, let's just be obvious here. She has access to an enormous library. Okay. Yeah. In fact, she also has because she has access to all of this, she is actually a collector of books as well. And she collects Walt Whitman. And her collection of Walt Whitman poetry is said to be the most important of its kind and was donated to the Library of Congress because of its completeness in that regard.
Dang, yeah.
So after she goes to school, she goes to public schools in New Jersey, she becomes a librarian. She works for the Rahway Library Association. But while she's working as a librarian, she's writing.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So her first book is The Sign of the Sphinx in 1896. And it was a collection of charades. And I had to go down a whole thing to figure out what this was. Yeah. Okay. This is not just acting it out. It's like, it's closer to riddles.
Okay.
Yeah. So she writes this book of riddles called The Sign of the Sphinx. It's, all right. Makes sense there. So her next publications were The Jingle Book and The Story of Betty.
So she
in
evolved from short form to longer piece. Okay,
exactly. And then she goes back because her next one is a book of verse entitled Idle Idols.
And she wasn't afraid to make dad jokes.
You're gonna see a theme here.
Okay.
Which was right in 1900. After 1900, Wells wrote numerous novels and collections of poetry. Okay, so she writes over 170 books. And during the first 10 years of her career, she's concentrating on poetry, humor, and children's books.
Can you just reflect on over 170 books?
I know.
I need to start writing more. Okay.
Okay, so this is what's kind of going to tie it all together. According to her autobiography, she heard That Affair Next Door in 1897. It's one of Anna Catherine Green's novels. It was one of her mystery novels. It was being read out loud. She just overheard it, and she's immediately captivated by it and the unraveling of the puzzle that's in it. So from that point onward, she hears that, she writes only mystery and crime in that genre. Yeah. So among the most famous of her detective novels were Fleming Stone detective stories, which were 61 in a series. Wells' The Clue in 1909 is on the Haycraft Queen Cornerstone list of essential mysteries. And she's also the first to conduct an annual series devoted to the best short crime fiction of the previous year in the U.S. In addition to books, she is writing for newspapers as well. Her poetry accompanies the work of some leading lights in illustration and cartooning, often in the form of Sunday magazine cartoons that form like a continuing narrative that you always come back to. Today, however, she is best known for her light verse, particularly for several classic limericks, including this one I'm going to leave you with.
Oh, boy.
A canner exceedingly canny one morning remarked to his granny, "A canner can anything that he can, but a canner can't can he?"
It's a bit more clever than There Once Was a Lady from College. All right.
That's it.
So as we've talked about, my burden, my welcome burden is to bring it into the now. And now I'm going to totally screw with your brain a little bit by going with something. I think the thing about the works that we've spoken about up till now is they're works of fiction and they have a conclusion and we're comforted by that. And the thing about true crime and leaning on the true part of it is real life don't always shake out that way. Mm-hmm. Real life tends to leave things unsolved. So I went for a more modern true crime that is perhaps one of the more notorious unsolved ones. Yes. It's super current right now. A lot of things have been done about it.
Yes.
But I'm going to take us to December of 1977.
Ooh.
Talk about really jumping forward.
Yes.
Juliana dropped us somewhere in the 40s.
I left us right at 1920.
20s, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's 50 years later. And this interesting poem arrives at the Sacramento Bee. It is also sent to the mayor's office and KVIE 6 TV in Sacramento.
I'm getting so excited because I know what you're talking about.
You do
and I'm so excited. I'm so excited I can hardly sit still. Okay.
This thing that's sent to them is called Excitement's Crave.
I know.
I'm going to read it for you. All those mortals surviving birth upon facing maturity take inventory of their worth to prevailing society. Choosing values becomes a task. Oneself must seek satisfaction. The selected route will unmask character when plans take action. Accepting some work to perform at fixed pay but promise for more is a recognized social norm, as is decorum seeking lore. Achieving while others lifting should be cause for deserving fame. Leisure tempts excitement seeking. What's right and expected seems tame. Jesse James has been seen by all, and Son of Sam has an author. Others now feel temptation's call. Sacramento should make an offer to make a movie of my life that will pay for my planned exile. Just now I'd like to add the wife of a mafia lord to my file. Your East Area rapist and deserving pest. See you in the press or on TV. So, Juliana knows where I'm going with this, because this is perhaps, when you think about unsolved murders in the United States, top 5, top 3. There are a lot of things throughout history that have sort of, like we go, whatever happened to D.B. Cooper when he hijacked the plane? What about the Zodiac killer? Like, these are really well known, and this one does become known as well. But it's taken off recently, and it actually, somewhat in part, and by recently I mean within the past month,
yes,
there's been a real uptick in it again,
yes,
because there's a current work that has just been released that I'm going to read a book excerpt from.
Okay.
The book is called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Mm-hmm. He was young, anywhere from 18 to 30, Caucasian and athletic, capable of eluding capture by vaulting tall fences. A single-story house second from the corner in a quiet middle-class neighborhood was his preferred target, and he always wore a mask. Precision and self-preservation were his identifying features. When he zeroed in on a victim, he often entered the home beforehand, when no one was there, studying family pictures, learning the layout. He disabled porch lights and unlocked sliding glass doors. He emptied bullets from house guns. Unworried homeowners' closed gates were left open. Pictures he moved were put back, chalked up to the disorder of daily life. The victims slept untroubled until the flashlight's blaze forced open their eyes. Blindness disoriented them. Sleepy minds lumbered, then raced. A figure they couldn't see wielded the light, but who and why? Their fear found direction when they heard the voice, described as a guttural whisper through clenched teeth, abrupt and threatening. Though some detected an occasional lapse into a higher pitch, a tremble, a stutter, as if the masked stranger in the dark was hiding not only his face, but also a raw unsteadiness that he couldn't always disguise. It takes hubris to think you can crack a complex serial murder case that a task force representing 5 California jurisdictions with input from the FBI hasn't been able to solve, especially when your detective work is, like mine, DIY. My interest in crime has personal roots. The unsolved murder of a neighbor when I was 14 sparked my fascination with cold cases. The advent of the internet transformed my interest into an active pursuit. Once public records came online and sophisticated search engines were invented, I recognized how a head full of crime details could intersect with an empty search bar. And in 2006, I launched a website called True Crime Diary. When my family goes to sleep, I time travel, reframe stale evidence using 21st century technology. I start clicking, scouring the internet for digital clues authorities may have overlooked, combing digitized phone books, yearbooks, Google Earth views of crime scenes, a bottomless pit of potential leads for the laptop investigator who now exists in the virtual world. I share my theories with my loyal readers who read my blog. I've written about hundreds of unsolved crimes, the chloroform murders to kill priests. This man, though, has consumed me the most. In addition to 50 sexual assaults in Northern California, he was responsible for 10 sadistic murders in Southern California. Here was a case that spanned a decade and ultimately changed DNA law in the state. Neither the Zodiac killer who terrorized San Francisco in the late 60s and early 70s, nor the Night Stalker who had Southern Californians locking their windows in the 80s were as active as this man. Yet the Golden State Killer has little recognition. He didn't have a catchy name till I coined one. He attacked a different jurisdiction across California that didn't always share information or communicate well with one another. By the time DNA testing revealed the crimes previously thought to be unrelated were the work of one man, more than a decade had passed since his last known murder, so his capture wasn't a priority. He flew under the radar, at large and unidentified, but still terrorizing his victims. In 2001, a woman in Sacramento answered her phone in the same house where she'd been attacked 24 years earlier. "Remember when we played?" the man whispered. She recognized his voice immediately. His words echoed something he'd said in Stockton when the couple's 6-year-old daughter got up to use the bathroom and encountered him in the hallway. He was no less than 20 feet away, a man in a brown ski mask and black knit mittens, wearing no pants. He had a belt on with some sort of sword on it. "I'm playing tricks with your mom and dad," he said. "Come watch me." I am, as Juliana jumped immediately to talking about the original Night Stalker, the Golden State Killer, also known as, when the name was first coined, the East Area Rapist.
She gives him the name, the Golden State Killer, right?
Yes, that's a more recent one. He actually began, and by the way, Michelle McNamara.
That's right.
And I will be getting back to her in a little bit.
I didn't realize she passed.
Yeah, well, she...
I'm sorry if I'm jumping.
No, it's okay. Michelle McNamara, and this was her big piece she was working on. Yeah, she died back in April of 2016.
Okay.
And it's the work of her husband that has gotten this book published.
Okay.
And I'll get back to that. But, so, I guess I'll roll back a little bit into my fascination, because we talked about ghost stories, you know, we did a whole episode of ghost stories.
Yes.
For some reason, they terrify me less than true crime. For some reason, it's, I guess...
I get that,
Yeah. My first exposure to true crime, and actually this was one of those stories, because this thing's almost 40 years ago now, and this guy's never been caught.
Yeah.
And there's that just plays in your brain a little bit, but I first encountered the story on that old, I consider the gold standard for TV crime shows, Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes.
With Robert Stack.
Yeah.
And I kind of snuck that show when I was a kid.
Yeah?
My parents would go grocery shopping on Friday nights, and it would be on, and I would try to make sure I was watching it.
Yeah.
But of course, I was maybe about 10, 11, so it would make me paranoid as all get out. So my parents would come home and I'd be like wired. And be like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Nothing, I'm fine. I just had a lot of sugar. I'll never sleep again." So, and of course, as I've moved to New Jersey, that's brought me into the world of like weird New Jersey, and this state just has a bunch of very, very strange things about it. So I was very tempted to do something like that's New Jersey based.
Yeah.
But the more the Golden State Killer, as we're going to call him now, the stereo rapist, the original Night Stalker, the more that's been in the headlines recently, the more I was like, I do really want to talk about this because it's just one of those things, man. For somebody who is that active, the fact that they've never found him is unsettling to say the very least. So the crimes were centered around East Sacramento in that area of California initially, when he was just the rapist. Yeah, and when he was just raping women. That's he was a home invasion, lie in wait kind of guy, is what I read. The excerpt from McNamara's book indicates, which is kind of the one that plays on your mind the most, because you think about, well, my house is locked and I'm fine, and this was the guy who would kind of subtly invade your home and then wait for you.
That is an obsession of mine. I freak out if like the garage door is open and we're not coming in or out of the garage.
Yeah.
No, because I just, imagine.
Oh, no, totally. And you want to go, God, I'm being irrational right now, but then there's that other part of your brain that whispers. Well, the other part of your brain whispers to you. Then it's like, well, they thought that they were just being irrational.
I know, right? Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway,
hey, do we know if we're the only ones in here right now?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we do know there are theater ghosts and whatever the heck makes the pipes crumble.
The theater ghosts will keep us safe.
I'm pretty sure that's just shoddy plumbing.
Not shoddy.
Iffy.
Antique.
All right, yeah. And of course, the other aspect of this, he wasn't just lying in wait for you in your home. He's masked.
Yeah.
And victims, as it was said here, were woken in the early morning after he'd been lying in wait for them. He used a very unique knot, which is worth noting, the diamond-shaped Chinese knot, and it's typically associated with decoration, not for like a quick and dirty restraint.
Ooh.
Like, Google that. It's weird. So, when you're talking about those subtle clues, like in Arthur Conan Doyle or whatever, and Sherlock is like, well, maybe it's somebody who's into design and decoration.
Is it something that you would use like in a drape or a tassel?
Yes, and in fact, in a couple of the instances, he used drapery cord to restrain his victims. And of course, there's this thing about it that he's, with so many murders that you think of in these scripted stories, you go, well, they're not really like that as far as like desiring the fame and the interest. But it's very clear he was and maybe still does, if he's still alive today, get off on how infamous and famous this has made him. Absolutely. I mean, he wrote a poem that he freaking sent to the mayor, the TV station, and the paper. It's like, come get me, if you can.
Yeah.
The kind of arrogance that evolves from that too. If we can pull anything good out of it, because honestly, when you've got somebody who got away with this for all intents and purposes 40 years ago, has never been caught, what would you look for anything that we've learned from it? And the fact that his crimes did lead to the establishment of a DNA registry as soon as technology got to that point is hugely important. Although that being said, it's interesting that you've got what you think of as an extensive DNA database, but they've never come up with a match for it. The most they've been able to do with the DNA is rule suspects out. So the thing that it tells me, as far as if they haven't had a DNA hit, either this guy's dead, or he's just not committed a crime that caused him to be pulled in and needing to, be submitted to the press.
Just not on the radar.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that sticks out about this case too is this guy was probably very young when he started. He was in his teens or his early 20s. So it's possible this is just somebody who was like, that's something I did when I was a kid, and I sowed my wild oats, and now he'd be 60 or 70 now, roughly, depending. So, could be a retiree just somewhere in middle America and just put that craziness behind him. But meanwhile, he destroyed lives. Yeah. And I think the thing that sticks out about this case for a lot of people, especially when you talk about television media and the way we get these things nowadays, is he left sound bites and he left very sensationalist stuff. This was, if you know nothing else about the original Night Stalker, he was the voicemail guy. Yeah. He was the one who left the "I'll kill you" voicemails before and after. And then the piece that catches me most, that 2001 follow-up many years later, going, remember when we played?
I'm a star cookie.
Gonna have to bleep myself. But, so, what I love about McNamara's writing, and I'm about to cycle back around.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And she points out these details that are so important, as far as maybe occasionally picking up that tremble in his voice.
Yes.
Or that weird odor that you could only really ascribe to anxiety, which is it's hard to grasp if you've never experienced that before, but I can almost pick up on what she means by that. Fear has a smell.
Yeah.
Fear has a smell.
Do you know, it's not lost on me that it's women writers that are so good at teasing this kind of thing out. Do you, that we're like that kind of in real life too? I hate to be like, assign gender.
Well, no, but to be honest, in a general, very sweeping broad strokes, there is much more of a detail attention to it. And actually, to the point of what kind of inspired Michelle McNamara, that she mentioned it in the piece I read, that there was actually a murder in an alleyway near her home. And she was a freshman in high school at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And it kind of, maybe someone who would be more, like a guy, like I want to be cool and chill and I'm a jock, and that didn't faze me at all. She not only had that kind of sit in her brain a little bit, she took it to that place of going, so that's what a cold case is, because they never saw it. It's like, well, that's interesting. And then she took our lovely digital revolution and the tools it's provided us with.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most of us who have even a passing interest in this have done things like,
yes,
let me see these, maybe I'm just weird, but like the morgue photos.
Absolutely,
like going down Google Earth.
Yes.
It's so relatable from that standpoint.
And all of a sudden it's 5 a.m.
Yeah, no, exactly. Actually, it's a larger excerpt from the book. It's really an excellent piece. She talks about how she'd put her daughter to bed and then be sitting in her daughter's little pink pastel room, and like there's, and she's reading and looking at murder scene photos. It's like, it's so, it's a thing. And you fall down that rabbit hole, but it's so, and especially when it's an unsolved situation for so long, there's that push in you to go, well, but maybe there's something I can do. Yeah. And now, I'm going to get back to the thing about Michelle McNamara a little bit more, because it's sad that she passed, because in a lot of ways I think she had so much more to give. Oh my gosh, yeah. She's the wife of comedian Patton Oswalt, is the piece that I've been holding back on. And he, very...
I knew that. I don't know why I didn't make that connection right now.
He's pushing this through. He's been doing interviews actually recently within the past few weeks, even going, this is my completing. He tweeted out, "We did it, baby. I got it published for you." Like, he knew how much this meant to her.
I knew this. I don't know why I flipped on this. I feel like we just had the conversation of like people are giving him a hard time about remarrying.
Oh no. And I mean, it's chaos be kind has sort of become now my thing. Like, he just did that stand-up special where he was talking about her death and how it affected him. And the thing that she said to him, kind of is a broader thing about life. She's like, "Honey, it's chaos. Be kind." Like, she had a lot of deep insight, and I can only strongly recommend you get this book if you have even a passing interest in Night Stalker. It's I'll Be Gone in the Dark, Michelle McNamara. It is out right freaking now. Yeah. And again, you said we need to do sequels on this. There are so many more unsolved things and, cold cases. There's a whole episode there as well beyond just murder.
Oh my gosh.
Just things.
And we're in it kind of culturally, we're in a mini obsessive moment with these unsolved mysteries. You have a lot of podcasts are dedicated to some unsolved mystery.
Oh, no, and that's why I'm saying, I actually wasn't sitting here hoping that I would drop new information on it.
Yeah.
It's out there. Mostly I'm sitting here going, there's this great piece of writing and tying in. This is why I was so happy with the way your notes went. Because it was like, I've got a true crime writer who brings it right up to today.
She's incredibly important to all the true crime people right now are talking about her.
In a lot of ways, I think, especially like the online community. Because as far as her actual physical...
It was a blog, right?
Yeah, exactly. Her physical publication list is this one book, but if you even idly, I mean, once you get past the surface, wife of... Like, in a lot of ways, I feel like her marrying Patton Oswalt may have been the worst thing that happened to her career in a way. But she was writing in television before she turned a corner into it. But clearly, as I said, from the freshman in high school story, this has been a passion for her entire life. So if you have even a passing interest, check out Michelle McNamara's I'll Be Gone in the Dark, because it's fantastic. And maybe we'll catch this guy. Maybe he's not dead. Who knows? Who knows? Only Packy will get that reference. I'll probably cut it. But the moment I say I'll probably cut it, it won't fade out. And that pretty much brings us to the end of our first season, save for a special last episode. I feel like we manifested this by mentioning it into the world, because we're going to be doing a live show.
Yes.
And I am so excited to put this energy in front of people who can talk back to us. And I think at this point we can talk about what it's going to be about.
Can we?
I think a little bit. Maybe we could, or at least we could give them a topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're
say one word. We can sum it up in one word. Pygmalion.
Okay. I was legit looking at you like we're going to say a different word. Boots.
Yellow.
Feet. Apparently all I care about are my feet. But no, this is going to be fantastic. I'm excited.
So excited.
To get in front of the audience. And we want to do more of this. And obviously, we're not ending this at a first season on these episodes. Nope. We have a lot more to be talking about. And we're just looking forward to being as strange and true, dear, as we can, dear. That wasn't grammatically correct, but I'm just going with it because I don't know how. Fade it out, okay? Just fade it. Just fade it. Murder! I need to say murder, most foul.